Hollywood has always had two faces. One shines for the cameras flawless, golden, adored. The other hides in the shadows, bruised by scandal, poisoned by ego, and scarred by truth. Every star who rises under the spotlight eventually learns that fame is not worship, it's surveillance. The applause fades, the whispers grow louder, and the very industry that built them begins to turn its back. These are the stories of those who lost everything, not just their careers, but their illusion of immortality. The idols who became headlines, the legends who became cautionary tales. From pop icons to Oscar winners, each name on this list is a reminder that in Tinseltown, every crown comes with a curse. But which of these stars fell the hardest? Who turned from adored to despised, and why does the world still love to watch them burn? 21. Madonna. Madonna was never just a singer, she was a storm. She didn't follow culture, she created it. From the gritty clubs of New York to global superstardom, she transformed rebellion into performance art. Her voice, her style, her defiance, every move challenged convention. For years, she was the embodiment of control in an industry that tried to silence women. Every scandal only seemed to make her stronger, every outrage just another spark in the empire she built from controversy. But somewhere between provocation and obsession, the line blurred. What once felt fearless began to feel desperate. Her constant reinventions, once celebrated as bold, now came off as hollow echoes of her past brilliance. She mocked younger artists while mimicking their styles, flaunted her body not as liberation but as proof she refused to fade. Her unapologetic nature, once her greatest strength, began to alienate even her most loyal fans. As the years passed, the headlines grew crueler. Out of touch, desperate, irrelevant. The same media that once worshipped her now dissected her every wrinkle and word. The woman who turned scandal into art had finally become a prisoner of it. Today, Madonna stands at a strange crossroads, both immortal and mocked. She is still the queen of pop, but also the queen of defiance turned self-parody. For every admirer who still calls her fearless, there are others who see only a fading legend, still fighting a war against time. And perhaps that's her greatest tragedy, that she won, but can never stop fighting. 20. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold Schwarzenegger's life reads like a myth, a man who conquered everything he touched. A foreign bodybuilder who became an American hero, a movie star who became a politician, a name that symbolized success through sheer will. He sold the world on discipline, ambition, and the promise that hard work could build anything, even an empire. He was the living proof that the American dream wasn't a fantasy. Then the illusion cracked. The same man who preached family values and moral strength was exposed for living a double life. The revelation that he had fathered a secret child with his household staff didn't just destroy his marriage, it shattered the public's faith in his legend. Allegations of inappropriate behavior resurfaced, painting a portrait not of strength but hypocrisy. The invincible Terminator had become human after all, and painfully so. The aftermath was brutal. His political legacy collapsed, Hollywood distanced itself, and the public that once admired his discipline now saw weakness and deceit. Yet Arnold didn't vanish, he returned. Older, quieter, still trying to project redemption, but the sparkle was gone. His legacy now lived in contradiction, hero and hypocrite, icon and scandal. Today, he remains powerful, but different, admired more for surviving disgrace than avoiding it. His story is no longer one of glory, but of endurance. The man who once said, "I'll be back," was right, he did come back. But this time, it wasn't to conquer the world. It was to face the wreckage of what he'd built. 19. Sylvester Stallone. Sylvester Stallone didn't just play the underdog, he was one. The struggling actor who wrote Rocky in a tiny apartment and refused to sell the script unless he could star in it became the embodiment of persistence. His story inspired millions. When Rambo followed, he wasn't just a movie star, he was an American symbol of grit, masculinity, and triumph against all odds. For decades, Stallone seemed unstoppable, the man who turned sweat and struggle into box office gold. But behind the camera, the myth unraveled. The humble fighter the world adored gave way to an ego that filled every room. Co-stars described him as controlling, manipulative, obsessed with perfection to the point of cruelty. The rugged charm that had once made him relatable hardened into arrogance. As his face changed under layers of surgery and his demeanor grew colder, fans began to wonder whether the man who once played the underdog had lost touch with the very humanity that made him famous. Then came the accusations, whispers of abusive behavior, allegations of misconduct that stained his image beyond repair. While some dismissed them as rumor, the damage was done. Stallone's public persona, once a symbol of strength and integrity, now carried an uncomfortable edge. His attempts to revive old franchises couldn't erase the feeling that the hero had become a shadow of himself. Today, Stallone is both legend and ghost, the fighter who refuses to fall, but can never truly rise again. His story no longer inspires, it haunts. He built a legacy on perseverance, but his downfall proved that no one, not even Hollywood's toughest survivor, can win against time, ego, and the truth. 18. Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis was the everyman hero who made imperfection cool. He wasn't a superhuman, he was human. In Die Hard, his wit, vulnerability, and bruised determination made audiences believe he was one of them. For years, he was the gold standard for charisma, the face of a new kind of action star, one who could bleed, joke, and save the day all at once. But fame rarely forgives fatigue. Over the years, the charm began to fade, replaced by arrogance and detachment. Directors whispered that he was impossible to work with, that he showed up unprepared, disinterested, and demanding. Co-stars described him as distant, cold, a man who'd grown tired of pretending to care. His name, once a mark of reliability, became shorthand for laziness and ego. As the projects got smaller, the pattern grew clearer. Willis began churning out low-budget films, barely showing up in them, sometimes appearing on screen for just minutes. Fans accused him of cashing in on his name while offering nothing in return. The whispers of decline turned to mockery until his diagnosis revealed a cruel truth. For years, he had been battling a degenerative illness that was slowly silencing him. What once seemed like indifference was, in fact, a symptom of tragedy. The revelation reshaped his legacy. Sympathy replaced anger, but it couldn't erase the years of disappointment. Bruce Willis became a tragic figure, the hero who fought too long, the man who tried to keep playing strong while his body and mind betrayed him. Today, he is remembered with equal parts admiration and sorrow, proof that even Hollywood's toughest heroes can crumble quietly long before the credits roll. 17. Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck's story is one Hollywood never gets tired of telling: the rise, the fall, and the fight to stay afloat. He was the golden boy from Boston, young, charming, and wildly talented. After Good Will Hunting, he became the poster child of modern success, an actor, writer, and eventually director who could seemingly do it all. His smile sold magazines, his charisma filled theaters, and for a moment, Ben Affleck was untouchable. But fame never forgets its debts. His relationship with Jennifer Lopez turned into a media circus that devoured him alive. Bennifer became the most overexposed couple in Hollywood, and when the spotlight turned toxic, Affleck's confidence began to fracture. Career failures like Jiggly made him an industry joke, and his personal struggles, drinking, gambling, and depression, became late-night fodder. What was once boyish charm turned into exhaustion, visible in every weary red carpet photo that tabloids gleefully circulated. His comeback seemed inevitable, and for a while it worked. He reinvented himself behind the camera with Argo, winning Oscars and critical praise. But fame is cyclical, and soon the headlines turned again. His marriage crumbled under public scrutiny, his temper and addictions resurfaced, and even his role as Batman became a metaphor for his struggle, a man wearing armor, hiding pain. Today, Ben Affleck remains a star, but one forever haunted by contradictions. To some, he's a survivor, proof that redemption is possible. To others, he's a symbol of self-sabotage, a man who never learned to live without the chaos that made him famous. His story isn't just about falling from grace, it's about never quite finding it again. 16. Matt Damon. Matt Damon was supposed to be the steady one, the calm counterpart to Affleck's chaos. From the moment they broke through together with Good Will Hunting, Damon cultivated the image of the grounded intellectual, an actor with moral compass, talent, and restraint. He was Hollywood's good guy, the one you could trust, reliable, humble, relatable. But even good guys have blind spots. Over time, Damon's polished image began to crack, not from scandal, but from arrogance disguised as wisdom. In interviews, his confident opinions on politics, diversity, and the Me Too movement came across as tone-deaf and dismissive. The man once praised for intelligence was now criticized for entitlement. His insistence on explaining issues he didn't fully understand turned his reputation from thoughtful to pompous, a Harvard dropout trying too hard to sound like a professor. Then came the misfires. His starring role in The Great Wall became a lightning rod for white savior criticism, a film that unintentionally exposed his privilege to a global audience. Each misstep deepened the disconnect between Damon's public image and the values he claimed to represent. The result was a slow erosion of trust. Damon wasn't cancelled, he simply became less interesting, less believable. The world that once saw him as a symbol of integrity now saw another Hollywood insider who mistook his fame for insight. Today, Matt Damon remains powerful and respected, but not untouchable. To many, he's still the smart, capable actor who helped shape modern cinema. But to others, he's proof that even the nicest faces in Hollywood can hide quiet arrogance, the kind that doesn't break careers overnight, but corrodes them from within. 15. Jennifer Aniston. Jennifer Aniston's smile once defined an era. She was the face of comfort television, the queen of Friends, and the woman every talk show host adored. For years, she represented everything wholesome about fame, approachable, likable, and unshakably charming. She was the kind of celebrity the public claimed as their own. Her life seemed perfect. Fame, fortune, beauty, and an endless stream of romantic comedies that kept her in Hollywood's warmest light. But that light started to burn. When her marriage to Brad Pitt collapsed under the weight of global gossip, Aniston's private heartbreak became everyone's favorite headline. She was portrayed as the perpetual victim the woman left behind, and no matter what she did, the tabloids refused to let her move on. Every smile was analyzed, every ringless hand photographed. Over time, the sympathy turned into exhaustion. The public began to grow tired of the narrative, of the endless cycle of poor Jennifer. Her career mirrored that fatigue. While other stars evolved, Aniston seemed frozen in time, stuck in roles that blurred together, her name more a brand than an artist's signature. Her efforts to branch into drama earned mixed reviews, and critics accused her of relying too heavily on nostalgia to stay relevant. Even her candid interviews about loneliness and aging sparked backlash, as though honesty itself had become another marketing tactic. Today, Jennifer Aniston still carries an aura of fame few can rival, but it's a bittersweet one. She's both admired and pitied, an actress who gave the world joy but could never escape her own image. Her story is Hollywood in a single frame, adored, overexposed, and ultimately misunderstood. 14. Gwyneth Paltrow. Gwyneth Paltrow was born into Hollywood not through luck, but lineage. She had the pedigree, the poise, and the talent to dominate the industry, and for a while she did. Her Oscar win for Shakespeare in Love confirmed her as elite. Her friendship circle included the most powerful names in the business, and her effortless charm made her seem untouchable. She wasn't just admired, she was envied. Then came Goop. What started as a wellness newsletter transformed into a billion-dollar empire and the downfall of her public image. The brand became synonymous with privilege and pseudoscience, pushing jade eggs, $200 face creams, and spiritual cleanses that doctors called dangerous. What she saw as empowerment, the world saw as exploitation. Instead of inspiring self-care, she inspired ridicule. The more she talked, the worse it got. Interviews where she claimed her life was harder than people think, or that she couldn't relate to ordinary work, made her sound detached from reality. To fans, she became the ultimate caricature of Hollywood arrogance, the woman selling enlightenment from inside a mansion. Her name became a symbol of everything people resented about celebrity excess: tone, deaf, unreachable, and wrapped in privilege. Still, Paltrow thrives in her own bubble. Goop remains profitable, and her loyal followers defend her as a visionary who turned fame into business. But for most of the world, she's the face of modern pretension, a cautionary tale about how self-belief can so easily turn into delusion. Gwyneth Paltrow didn't just lose her audience, she divided it, proving that in Hollywood, authenticity sells, but only if people believe you still have a soul. 13. Kristen Stewart. Kristen Stewart didn't ask to be the face of a global phenomenon, but Twilight made her one anyway. In her early 20s, she was catapulted into a level of fame that few actors ever experience, and even fewer survive. Her blank stares, quiet voice, and unfiltered demeanor set her apart from Hollywood's polished personas. She wasn't performing for fame, and for a while, that made her magnetic. Fans saw her as authentic, grounded, even rebellious against the glittering machine that created her. But the same qualities that drew admiration soon became ammunition. Critics mocked her for being emotionless. Interviews where she appeared awkward were twisted into arrogance. And then came the scandal that shattered everything: her affair with director Rupert Sanders. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was a cultural event. The media fed on it for months, portraying her as Hollywood's cold-hearted villain. Overnight, the girl who had embodied youthful mystery became a symbol of shame. Her career suffered. Big studios turned away, her box office pull evaporated, and even her fans seemed unsure whether to defend or abandon her. Instead of chasing redemption through blockbusters, she retreated into art films, carving a new identity among critics who appreciated her intensity. Slowly, she earned back respect, not as a star, but as a survivor. Still, the scars remain. To some, Kristen Stewart is proof that talent can outlast scandal. To others, she's the eternal outsider, a reminder that once Hollywood decides you're guilty, innocence no longer matters. Her story is one of endurance, quiet rebellion, and the loneliness that comes with being seen by everyone, yet understood by no one. 12. Demi Moore. Demi Moore was once the symbol of female power in Hollywood. Beautiful, commanding, and fearless. She broke barriers in the 90s, becoming one of the highest-paid actresses in history. Her performances in Ghost, A Few Good Men, and Indecent Proposal proved that she could balance sensuality with strength, vulnerability with control. For a while, she was the future of women in film, and she carried that crown-like armor. But Hollywood never lets women keep power for long. The very success that made Moore a trailblazer became the weapon used against her. Her record-breaking paychecks were called excessive, her confidence mistaken for arrogance. When Striptease flopped, the press didn't just mock the movie, they mocked her. She became the target of a media obsessed with tearing down the same woman it had built up. Her personal life became tabloid prey. Her marriage to Ashton Kutcher, 20 years her junior, was treated as spectacle. The public called her desperate, vain, and delusional for daring to love a younger man. When that relationship collapsed, the ridicule intensified. The woman once hailed as fearless was suddenly framed as pathetic. Demi Moore has since rebuilt herself with raw honesty, revealing in her memoir the addiction, trauma, and pain hidden beneath the glamour. Yet despite the courage it took to tell her story, the stain of the past lingers. To some, she's a survivor who exposed the hypocrisy of Hollywood. To others, she's a fallen star who flew too close to the sundae. Demi Moore's tragedy is not just her downfall, it's the reminder that in Hollywood, Strength in a woman is celebrated only until it becomes threatening. 11. Sharon Stone. Sharon Stone was never meant to blend in, she was born to provoke. When Basic Instinct hit theaters, it didn't just launch her career, it reshaped Hollywood's relationship with sex, power, and danger. That infamous scene made her both a star and a symbol, a woman who dared to weaponize her allure in a business that had long used it against her. For a moment, Stone wasn't acting, she was redefining control. She was intelligent, articulate, and unapologetically bold, everything Hollywood claimed to want but never truly accepted. Yet the same industry that once praised her for bravery quickly punished her for ambition. Stories began to circulate of her temper, her ego, her unwillingness to play nice. Directors called her impossible. Co-stars avoided her. The media reframed her confidence as narcissism, her assertiveness as aggression. Suddenly, the woman who had been hailed as fearless was recast as ungrateful and cruel. Her private life fed the narrative. Failed marriages, court battles, and her often unfiltered interviews became tabloid fodder. Each headline chipped away at her image, turning the former goddess of control into a cautionary tale about fame and defiance. Even as she gave nuanced performances, the world saw only the shadow of the woman who had once crossed her legs on screen and changed everything. Today, Sharon Stone remains captivating, not because she's flawless, but because she's endured. She has outlived the gossip, even if she can never escape it. Her name still carries the pulse of danger, but also of loss, proof that Hollywood never truly forgives a woman who dares to own her power. 10. Nicolas Cage. For a time, Nicolas Cage embodied a kind of cinematic madness that could only exist in Hollywood. He wasn't just an actor, he was an experience. From his raw intensity in Leaving Las Vegas to the operatic chaos of Face divided by Off and the adventurous charm of National Treasure, Cage could move from brilliance to absurdity in a single breath. His unpredictability made him fascinating, a performer so fearless that audiences never knew whether they were watching genius or insanity. But the line between the two began to blur. His off-screen life became as chaotic as his performances. He bought mansions, exotic animals, and ancient artifacts, spending fortunes faster than he could make them. When the debts came due, Cage didn't slow down, he worked faster, appearing in film after film, many of them cheap and forgettable, just to stay afloat. What fans once saw as artistic risk-taking began to look like desperation. The eccentricities that once made him magnetic now made him a meme. The press mocked his outbursts, his financial ruin, his unhinged interviews. Hollywood stopped seeing him as an artist and started treating him like a punchline. The man who once won an Oscar became an example of excess gone too far. Yet in his chaos, there's still something deeply human. In recent years, through smaller, strange, and beautiful films, Cage has clawed back a measure of respect. He has turned his downfall into a new kind of art, the spectacle of survival. But his name will always carry dual meaning: brilliance and breakdown, glory and ruin. Nicolas Cage is living proof that in Hollywood, even geniuses can burn too bright, and the world will watch, again and again, just to see what's left when the fire dies. 9. Mark Wahlberg. Mark Wahlberg's journey has always been a story of reinvention. He clawed his way out of a violent past, transforming from a street thug into a pop culture success, first as the shirtless rapper Marky Mark, and later as one of Hollywood's most bankable stars. Films like Boogie Nights, The Departed, and The Fighter helped erase the rough edges of his early life, turning him into an emblem of redemption. To the public, Wahlberg became a man who had conquered his demons and built a legacy from discipline and faith. But redemption in Hollywood is rarely pure. As his fame grew, his past refused to stay buried. The assaults, the racial violence, the crimes he once committed as a teenager began resurfacing, and this time, people weren't willing to forgive so easily. The man who claimed to have changed was now being asked to answer for the damage he had caused. When he petitioned to have his criminal record erased, the public saw not repentance, but entitlement, another celebrity rewriting history through influence and wealth. His public image as a devout Catholic family man only deepened the hypocrisy. Each time Wahlberg spoke about morality or prayer, critics reminded him of the lives he had harmed. And when news broke that he earned millions more than his female co-star for reshoots on All the Money in the World, his reputation for humility began to crumble. The working-class hero was now seen as another Hollywood elitist, out of touch, self-protective, and blinded by privilege. Today, Mark Wahlberg still commands respect, but not the kind he once enjoyed. His success is undeniable, yet his legacy feels fractured, divided between the man he claims to be and the boy he once was. He stands as proof that in Hollywood, redemption is fragile, and forgiveness has an expiration date. 8. Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe's name once carried the weight of legend. He wasn't just an actor, he was a force of nature. His performances in Gladiator and A Beautiful Mind earned him not just awards, but awe. He was the rare star, whose power came not from beauty or charm, but from raw, undeniable intensity. Directors called him magnetic. Audiences called him transcendent. For a brief, shining moment, Russell Crowe was Hollywood's warrior poet, the man who brought gravitas back to the screen. But the fire that fueled his brilliance was the same fire that burned everything around him. His temper became notorious drunken fights, thrown phones, public insults. He was arrested, ridiculed, and slowly transformed from hero to hazard. What had once seemed like passion now looked like rage. Colleagues described him as combative, controlling, and impossible to please. The same ferocity that gave him power on screen made him unbearable off it. As the years passed, the myth of Crowe began to collapse under its own weight. He spoke bitterly about Hollywood, lashed out at journalists, and seemed to resent the fame that had once defined him. The Gladiator had won his battles, but lost his peace. Even his attempts to mellow with age carried the lingering shadow of anger, like a man who couldn't stop fighting, even when there was no one left to fight. Today, Russell Crowe remains respected but weary, a fallen titan who still roams the edges of the empire he once ruled. To some, he's the actor who gave everything to his art. To others, he's the man who mistook rage for greatness. His story is one of brilliance turned bitter, a reminder that power without humility always devours itself. 7. Sean Penn. Sean Penn has always been Hollywood's contradiction, a man of towering talent and uncontrollable chaos. From Mystic River to Milk, his performances were electric, raw, and unforgettable. He wasn't acting, he was bleeding emotion on screen, channeling fury and brilliance into art that felt almost dangerous. Critics called him one of the greatest actors of his generation, and audiences believed it. For a time, Penn seemed like the last of a dying breed, a performer who lived and burned for authenticity. But behind that fire was something darker. His temper was legendary, his arrogance notorious. He didn't just challenge journalists, he attacked them. He didn't just argue, he exploded. His turbulent marriage to Madonna in the 80s left scars that never faded, with allegations of violence and control that shadow him to this day. Each time Penn tried to redefine himself, those old ghosts returned, whispering reminders of the cruelty that fame could never wash away. Even his activism, once seen as brave, turned divisive. He aligned himself with controversial figures, from Hugo Chavez to El Chapo, crossing the thin line between boldness and recklessness. His efforts to play the savior only deepened the perception of hypocrisy, a millionaire actor preaching morality while fraternizing with power and crime. Sean Penn's fall wasn't a single crash but a slow erosion. Audiences stopped admiring his intensity and began recoiling from it. His legacy, once built on artistry, became inseparable from ego. Today he stands as both genius and cautionary tale, a reminder that brilliance without restraint is a fire that always burns its master first. 6. Woody Allen. For half a century, Woody Allen was the mind behind some of cinema's most delicate portraits of love, neurosis, and the human condition. Films like Annie Hall and Manhattan weren't just entertainment, they were therapy sessions for a generation lost between irony and intimacy. He was hailed as the intellectual heart of Hollywood, a storyteller who turned anxiety into poetry. His awkward charm and rapid-fire wit made him both relatable and revered the artist as everyman. Then came the reckoning. Allegations of sexual abuse against his adopted daughter Dylan Farrow shattered the illusion of the lovable eccentric. The revelations of his relationship with Soon-Yi Previn, the adopted daughter of his former partner Mia Farrow, added another layer of discomfort. What once looked like intellectual detachment now appeared predatory. His name, once synonymous with genius, became shorthand for moral decay. For years, Allen's fame protected him. Studios kept financing his films, actors kept lining up to work with him, and award ceremonies still applauded. But when the cultural tides shifted, his empire began to crumble. Streaming platforms pulled his projects, collaborators publicly disowned him, and critics who once praised his art revisited it with horror. The question stopped being whether his films were brilliant, it became whether they should ever be watched again. Today, Woody Allen lives in exile from the world he helped shape. His defenders call him a victim of hysteria. His detractors see him as a man who turned his private sins into public art. Either way, his name has become a cautionary whisper in Hollywood, proof that no amount of genius can outlast the shadows it hides behind. 5. Whoopi Goldberg. Whoopi Goldberg once stood as one of the brightest lights in Hollywood, a rare voice of wit, empathy, and truth. Her talent was undeniable. From The Color Purple to Ghost, she carried roles that balanced heartbreak with humor, strength with sensitivity. She was the outsider who broke in, the performer who could make you laugh one moment and shatter you the next. When she earned her place among the elite few with an Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony, she became not just an actress, but an icon, proof that barriers could be broken with brilliance. But somewhere between legend and legacy, Goldberg lost her footing. Her unfiltered opinions, once celebrated for honesty, began to ignite controversy. On The View, her long-running platform for candor turned into a stage for scandal. Remarks that blurred the line between boldness and insensitivity sparked outrage, from comments minimizing the Holocaust to tone-deaf defenses of men accused of abuse. Audiences who once saw her as fearless began to see her as reckless, mistaking controversy for wisdom. What hurt her most wasn't just the backlash, but her defiance of it. Rather than reflect, Goldberg often doubled down, dismissing criticism as overreaction. The woman who had once given a voice to the voiceless began to sound detached from the reality she helped shape. It was as if the very empathy that made her great had hardened into cynicism. Today, Whoopi Goldberg remains powerful but polarizing. Her achievements are etched in Hollywood history, yet her words continue to stir unease. She is a living contradiction, a pioneer who challenged prejudice but became trapped by her own. In the end, her story isn't just about fame, but about how even legends can lose their compass when the truth becomes too easy to twist. 4. Shia LaBeouf. Shia LaBeouf's career began like a fairy tale, the scrappy, funny kid from Even Stevens who grew into one of Hollywood's brightest young stars. His intensity in Transformers, his vulnerability in Fury, and his raw commitment to art made him seem like the future of acting itself. He wasn't just talented, he was fearless, willing to risk reputation and comfort in pursuit of something real. But somewhere along the way, that pursuit turned self-destructive. His public life became a spiral of chaos-drunken arrests, bizarre performance art, plagiarized projects, and explosive outbursts. What fans once admired as eccentricity began to look like madness. The boy wonder had become a spectacle, a man unraveling in front of cameras that never blinked. The media mocked him, the industry distanced itself, and the name Shia LaBeouf became shorthand for wasted potential. Then came the accusations, the darkness behind the chaos. His ex-partner accused him of physical and emotional abuse, painting a portrait far more disturbing than mere instability. The artistic rebel who had preached authenticity was now accused of cruelty and control. His apologies sounded sincere, but the timing felt calculated, a survival move from a man cornered by his own demons. Today, LaBeouf's career exists in fragments, flashes of brilliance buried under layers of controversy. To some, he's still an artist of rare depth, misunderstood and broken. To others, he's the embodiment of Hollywood hypocrisy, using art to excuse harm. His story is a study in contradictions, a man who chased truth until it destroyed him, and who may never stop running from what he found. 3. Katherine Heigl. Katherine Heigl once had Hollywood in the palm of her hand. She was young, talented, effortlessly charming, a bright new face with the kind of appeal that made her both relatable and radiant. After Grey's Anatomy turned her into a household name and romantic comedies like Knocked Up and 27 Dresses made her box office gold, the industry crowned her its next leading lady. She was destined for longevity, or so everyone thought. Then came the fall, swift and merciless. Heigl's public comments about Knocked Up, calling the film a little sexist, angered the very people who had made her a star. When she withdrew her name from Emmy contention, claiming her Grey's Anatomy material wasn't good enough, she didn't just offend her writers, she offended an entire town. Overnight, she went from fresh and outspoken to ungrateful and impossible. Rumors of on-set conflicts, inflated egos, and endless demands spread like wildfire. Hollywood turned its back on her. One by one, the calls stopped coming. Roles that should have been hers went to others, and her career slipped quietly into the shadows. When she spoke later about anxiety, burnout, and the fear of being labeled difficult, it was too late. The narrative had already hardened. The once beloved starlet had become an example of what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you. Today, Katherine Heigl still works on television, on streaming, away from the spotlight that once defined her. To some, she's a victim of a cruel industry that punishes women for confidence. To others, she's a cautionary tale about arrogance. Either way, her story remains one of Hollywood's sharpest reversals, the transformation from promise to pariah, all because of words that the town she conquered would never forget. 2. Meg Ryan. Meg Ryan didn't just star in romantic comedies, she was the genre. Her laugh, her eyes, her warmth, everything about her radiated sincerity. Films like When Harry Met Sally, Sleepless in Seattle, and You've Got Mail made her the beating heart of 90s cinema. To millions, she was love itself, honest, hopeful, unguarded. Her on-screen presence was so genuine that people forgot she was acting. She wasn't a celebrity. She was a feeling. Then came the unraveling. When her affair with Russell Crowe went public, it didn't just shock her fans, it shattered her image. The world wasn't ready to see America's sweetheart as flawed, and the tabloids devoured her for it. Her marriage to Dennis Quaid dissolved in public view, and suddenly, every headline carried the same message. The fairy tale was over. Roles dried up, and the few films she made afterward struggled to find an audience. Even her appearance became a spectacle. As she aged and changed, the media turned vicious, mocking her for cosmetic procedures, for daring to look different from the woman they once idealized. What was once affection became cruelty. Hollywood, which had once sold her image of purity and youth, discarded her the moment she no longer fit it. Today, Meg Ryan lives quietly, away from the noise that once consumed her. Her name still carries nostalgia and sadness. To some, she remains the face of love lost too soon. To others, she's a relic of an era when innocence sold better than truth. Her fall wasn't a scandal of crime or cruelty, it was simply the moment she stopped being what Hollywood wanted her to be. And in this town, that's the greatest sin of all. 1. Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer once carried the mystique of a true Hollywood enigma, handsome, magnetic, and fiercely intelligent. From Top Gun to The Doors, from Tombstone to Heat, he was the actor other actors admired. His performances burned with precision and emotion, a mix of control and chaos that made him unforgettable. Kilmer wasn't just talented, he was transformative. He became every role so completely that audiences forgot where the man ended and the character began. For a while, it seemed that no one in Hollywood could touch him. But behind that genius was a storm brewing. Kilmer's dedication to his craft curdled into obsession, his pursuit of excellence into arrogance. Directors complained of constant arguments, crew members whispered about his hostility, and co-stars described him as brilliant and unbearable. On Batman Forever, what was meant to be his crowning moment instead exposed his volatility. The set was miserable, the relationships broken, and Kilmer walked away with a reputation that would follow him for the rest of his career. His fame began to decay quietly. The roles grew smaller, the headlines harsher. He earned the label of difficult, the word that kills more careers in Hollywood than failure ever could. And as his health deteriorated, robbing him of his voice, the world began to remember him not for his talent, but for his downfall. What had once been mythic became tragic. A man silenced by both his body and the ghosts of his own pride. Today, Val Kilmer is revered and pitied in equal measure, a reminder of how fleeting brilliance can be. His legacy is complex. He is both artist and exile, legend and warning. In a town obsessed with reinvention, Kilmer's story is one of permanence. That ego, once unleashed, leaves marks even time cannot erase. Hollywood is a kingdom built on contradictions, adoration and resentment, fantasy and failure, glamour and decay. These 21 names prove that fame is never just light, it always casts a shadow. They were adored, envied, and worshipped until they weren't. One scandal, one mistake, one glimpse behind the mask, and the same crowds that cheered them turned away. Some of these stars fell because of their own pride. Others were consumed by the system that built them. But all share the same fate to be remembered not for their greatness, but for their downfall. In Hollywood, hate lasts longer than love, and every legend eventually becomes someone else's cautionary tale.